Welcome everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces. So good morning. I hope everybody's as chipper as I am. You probably came from a ways like I did. So many of you I know, some of you I just met. So a little bit of what I'm going to do is just give you kind of some background about the industry and what's happening and kind of what's driving a lot of the changes right now, which obviously is having an impact on what we need to teach students to prepare them. And it really kind of caveats very nicely to the keynote this morning. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I found that really, really just very inspirational and also very informative. Basically, a catalyst for change. So we see there are three things right now that are really impacting IT. One is obviously the budget dilemma, right? That people have, they don't want to be using 75% of their IT budget to keep the lights on and only 25% for innovation. So something has to change in IT so that they can actually invest more of their money and get the ROI than investing it all in just keeping the lights on and that. More and more with the growth of digital information, right? So the digital universe is doubling basically every year. It's doubling twice a year. And so if you continue to have to spend all your money just managing this growth of information, it's not very effective because it's only going to get larger and larger. And as we learned today, what's one of the key job roles that people are talking about in 2020? Has anybody heard? She said data science, right? So it's actually taking all that information and having the skills to analyze it and create new innovation from it. So that's one of the other things. And obviously cybersecurity, right, is a huge factor, and security is very hot, and that, we need more, and we need to be protecting our information. I mean, the number of threats that come in every day that networks are thwarting is, pretty amazing. The digital universe. So EMC has been doing commissioning a study with IDC, and we usually update it every year, and it was about an 18-month gap this time. And we just updated it at the end of the year and came out with it. So if you're not familiar with this study, I really recommend that you get more familiar with it. So if you look here, 50-fold growth from the beginning of 2010 to the end of 2020, so 40 zettabytes. And I always am like, okay, what's a zettabyte? It's such a big number, right? So 1 zettabyte is 1 trillion gigabytes. So it's pretty amazing when you think about just the amazing growth. And that's not going to slow down. And actually, just like the keynote this morning, I saw this study has come up with a lot of great videos that you could show your students and leverage as resources. And they've done a really nice job of it. So as we think about the digital universe, everything we do in our digital lives creates data that is stored, replicated, and consumed. Where does it come from? Where is it going? And what does it mean for you? So I wanted to show this quick video. I'm going to show this one, but there's actually another one that I also would highly recommend you look at about not just us creating information, but a lot of it is being created by machines now. So it's pretty amazing with the amount of visual information that's getting created by a machine. So I'm going to just stop real quick here and launch this video. I already brought it up. So it would be more ready. Just a 5-minute little video, but I think it's really worth it. I don't know. I didn't think about the sound. Do you think it'll be? I don't know. Okay. Hold on, I don't think I have this, that's the one thing I didn't test, so. Okay, he's going to just adjust the volume, otherwise you can't hear it. You got it?
Every video you watch on YouTube, every photograph taken on your smartphone that you posted online, every update to Twitter. Everything we do today in our digital lives creates data that are stored, replicated, and consumed in the cloud. We call this the digital universe, a measure and analysis of this data growth that explores where it comes from and projects where this incredible phenomenon is going. ICT and EMC set out in 2007 to study this data growth. We're tracking the sources of data creation, the technologies used to create it, and the socio and geographic trends that impact the data explosion.
Consider the growth of social media alone. Twitter, only founded in 2006, has 400 million tweets a day in 2012. YouTube, virtually unknown before 2005, now accounts for more than 4 billion hours of video watched every month. And the social media giant Facebook, launched in 2004, has now passed 1 billion users globally. That's a billion. So what you do today adds bits by the millions, if not billions, to the digital universe. But at the same time, the digital universe is collecting bits about you, account activities, IP addresses, facial scans on public security, access to public databases, and so on. Think of this as your digital shadow, which, by the way, contains more bits about you than you actually see on your phone. Your footprint in the digital universe is also affected by your age. Although one of the fastest growing age cohorts of the internet and social media sites is older people, young people are still driving much of the traffic over social media and the internet. Consider this stat. Youth aged 15 to 29 account for 25% of the world's population, but 37% of consumer-generated bits in the digital universe. They produce twice as many bits per capita as people 45 to 59. According to the Pew Research Center, for instance, young people ages 18 to 24 in the U.S. send and receive an average of 109 texts a day, compared to less than 15 for those over 45. 21% of online users that age use Twitter, 20 times more often than those over 45. If you think of where all the young people pumping information into the digital universe in 2020 will come from, look to the parts of the world where more than 85% of them live, emerging markets. Many, of course, are not on the internet, but it's a fast-growing segment that will more than double its 2010 share of the digital universe by 2020.
So is the use of your digital shadow innovative or invasive? That's a question that should be asked each time your data is leveraged in any app. The problem is, perspective is everything. And while the intent may be harmless and actually helpful, someone else may find a harmful use, even predatory. It's virtually impossible to hide from the internet life. It will find you and link with your shadow. The best protection is awareness and avoidance of unnecessary exposure of your personal self to anything connected. This not only includes the use of your employer's equipment, but also the use of your personal devices. Bring your own device, or using your personal phones and computers for work, amplifies this issue of personal security and the potential violation of privacy. Using the same device for work and leisure demands the existence of a firewall of some sort to keep data creation and transmissions segregated. Technology is well behind the curve on this one, so discretion is the better part of valor. Our digital shadow is agnostic when it comes to the different facets of your life, such as work, family, and friends. In fact, many social networks like Twitter often merge your professional and personal lives digitally, so that one can very well influence the other. Posting a YouTube video of you doing something inappropriate could cost you your job. We've seen this over and over.
In the end, while younger people tend to have very near-term views of life without considering longer-term repercussions, older generations understand the dangers of too much exposure. It's never too soon to adopt a mindset of staying out of the internet limelight.
Great. So hopefully you guys found this informational. I think it just really goes back and kind of really reinforces many of the things that we heard in the keynote this morning. I think one in particular example that she gave was about Nordstrom and how they called her about her buying. I'm sure if you guys read that article, there was an article about Target. Also, she mentioned Target does this very well. Well, have you guys heard about that incident where they kept sending this family baby stuff? And it turns out that the daughter was pregnant, but the dad didn't know it, and they were calling because of where she kept stopping or buying things. So it is kind of that, invasive, like when is it good and when is it not? So that kind of customization. But I also think the security aspect is really key here too. Like, with between work and your personal life. Like I try to keep things separate, but I don't want to carry two devices. That becomes more complicated too. A lot of people have two phones, and that's great. But for me personally, and she mentioned this too. I mean, I came here with an iPad and my laptop and an iPhone, right, and my Kindle, and like in many of these devices, I get the same information, but I'm using them in different ways, right? But I think it really just goes to show you how much we rely on digital information. I mean, I know today, like, very rarely do I get photos printed unless I'm going to put them on the wall, right? Everything's very digital, so I think, and I even think of my daughter at 5, like her life today is going to be very different than my experience because she thinks iPads and iPhones and all of these things are just standard, right? But it's not. And so kind of what's the impact here with this large growth of digital information, with the digital universe doubling every 2 years, and that's not going to slow down, you know, how has that impacted IT? So if we think of like the classic data center, one server, one application, right? If we keep that up, that just keeps growing our footprint. It's not very efficient because if you're not virtualizing, which most people are today, server virtualization, right? In this old model, the classic model, you're only using, you know, 10 to 15% of your server. Not very efficient, not very, you know, it's just going to keep costing you more, plus footprint, plus power and cooling, all of those things. So really, I think a lot of what's driven the shift in IT is the growth of data needing to manage, but also cost, right, is a big factor. So we see the virtualized data center, which is really being able to sort of decouple the logical and the physical and be much more efficient. I know with EMC, like when we went and virtualized our whole data center, we went from like, you know, somewhere of like 150 servers down to like 18 or something. Pretty amazing when you think about kind of the key benefits. And now going to the cloud, right? So really making it IT as a service, right? So, I mean, and she mentioned that today, like setting up a business on eBay in an hour. Well, people just set up companies today and they don't want to invest in the hardware and the software and all of that stuff. So they're leveraging the they're leveraging the cloud and the services like an Amazon or a Google that they can just pay for and get up and running. Now, I would say most businesses or enterprises, you know, are going to have maybe a hybrid model where they have they've already created their own private cloud, and then they may use the public services depending on certain applications or whatnot. And why is that? I mean, big factor is security, right? Like if you're a company and you have your data living in a public cloud, or you're paying someone and now there's a security breach, you know, who's liable here, right? Because in many of these industries, there's, you know, all kinds of regulations around keeping your data and how long you have to keep it and protecting it. And a good example, you know, I look at, and it's sad but true that I use is always 9/11. Like what would have happened if those companies in the Twin Towers didn't have a replicated copy of their data somewhere? Right. I mean, most of those companies had a replicated copy over across the river in New Jersey. They were back up and running in a couple weeks. And they will tell you that any company that suffers a major data loss usually goes bankrupt in the next 2 years. They cannot survive. I mean, imagine if you went to refi and you don't get printed copies of your mortgage statement, and now you can't get them and they're just gone, or all your financial records are just gone. So edge of the cloud, I like to highlight here this definition of cloud computing. I don't know, are most of you familiar with the National Institute of Standards and Technologies and this definition of cloud computing? I like to put this up here. EMC, and I'm going to get to this in a few minutes, has a course called Cloud Infrastructure and Services. And our course, which is technology based, not EMC product specific, is actually based on this definition of cloud computing. And then we also do a study every year. It's an EMC study where we go out and we ask about 1,600 IT and storage managers what are their biggest challenges around the growth of digital information. And no surprise, number one is just managing the growth. And then I like to point out a few here, designing, deploying, and managing storage in a virtualized server environment, because all these great benefits of server virtualization are all dependent on shared storage. Meaning, you know, you want to be able to move that data seamlessly. You cannot do it unless you have a shared storage infrastructure underneath. I also think lack of skilled storage professionals, designing, deploying, and managing storage in cloud computing environments. This was new this year on the study when it came out. Well, it's actually last year, May of last year. Lack of cloud technology professionals, and also obviously convincing upper management to adopt cloud. So while a lot of people think, you know, how far are we out from cloud, it's here and it's only going to continue to increase. And one of the things that the study highlights is what is the impact on skills needed for IT professionals with the adoption of cloud computing. So if we think about high impact being the reskill the team, and moderate meaning additional skills, if you think about these three distinct groups, storage, systems, and network, you know, a high impact is 15 to almost 23% across these groups, but the moderate impact is almost near 50 in all of them, meaning additional cross-skilling is needed and training in all of these groups, not just one particular group. And then you also think about the skills gap here. When you look at it from last year to this year, what's the impact? So last year being the sort of grayish color here, and this year, what's the impact? And again, what we see is this is only continuing to grow, the need for additional training and additional skilling with the adoption of cloud computing. And this is a really good study, I think. If you're at a school or college where you really need to try to get, your administration to understand, like, why do we need to do this? This, I think, study is a really good, way to kind of show them and highlight what's happening in the industry and why these courses need to be introduced and offered. And then the hiring plan, so we asked them how do they plan to grow their teams and hire, and this is up 35%. And some new roles on here this year that came out, there's obviously the storage roles, this is business continuity and backup and recovery, data science, okay, so you're starting to see more and more roles around data science, cloud architects, and cloud administrators. So these are brand new this year to the study where people are saying we see roles and jobs. So, and I always say, don't take my word for it, right? Go out to Google, go out to some of these sites like Monster or Dice.com and search for these roles and see what's coming out, and they're out there. And you'll, it's pretty, that's pretty self-explanatory about the types of skills you're going to need and understanding the cloud. And I think it really also ties into the keynote about the T. That you're still going to have people that are going to need to be really deep in networking or storage or systems, but they also need to have the broad understanding of how all of these components interrelate and work together, and that's where that cross-skilling comes in. So our program, the EMC Academic Alliance, we've had it since 2006. We're now in over 1,000 institutions. We just hit that mark in December in over 60 countries. We have about 220 here in the U.S. We're in all but 5 states. And shockingly, they're all on the East Coast. Some of the states like Delaware, Rhode Island, Wyoming's another one we're not in. That's the only one that's not on the East Coast. But really, our goal at EMC was 6 years ago when EMC created this program. We did it because there was a lack of skilled storage professionals. So we said, hey, what can we do as an industry leader to give back and help really get people trained and reskilled? And we did it for the industry, and in creating it, also to impact academia, to give them a way to get, if faculty didn't have the experience, to get the training and then to offer the courses. I think what makes us unique is that our courses are technology-based, not product-specific. So most schools really like that because it's applicable to any vendor. And last year what we did is we actually added 3 additional courses to the program. So it was an exciting time last year. We've added a cloud infrastructure and services, data science and big data analytics, and backup recovery systems and architecture. And so now there's 4 course offerings in addition to the information storage and management one. And what we do is we provide the courseware, we provide faculty training for the faculty. Also for each of these courses we have instructor, what we call video instructor-led training, which is just self-paced e-learning for each of them. And you can get those for each of the courses. We provide all the PowerPoints, all the instructor material. This is just right here a highlight of our faculty, our secure faculty community. And this just gives you a really quick highlight of all of the concepts for each of the courses. And you can go out online and get each of the outlines. This, for the information storage and management, we actually have a textbook from Wiley where we've taken our commercial courseware and repackaged it into a book. And we just updated it last year, and it covers cloud as well this year, the new textbook. And what I will say for all of these, and I'm going to be handing this over to Rich for co-presenting, is for the information storage and management. It was great. One of the things that EMC was lacking when they came out with this course was labs to support the courseware. And we didn't do labs because guess what? It was technology-based. The goal was not to teach products, but what do all faculty want? They want hands-on. So we created a great partnership with a network development group, NDG, and very, very excited. They came out with 10 labs to support our courseware last May, and I know people have already been using them. The feedback has been great, and the beauty is they're using a lot of the skills that students need, which is virtual machines and open source tools. So there is very, you're not having to make a huge investment in like storage equipment, which can be very costly. And we're really excited to talk about the fact that next summer there's plans to have another lab to support the cloud infrastructure and I always keep forgetting to change that little typo there. Sorry, it's cloud infrastructure and services. I always see it and I can never seem to remind myself to fix it. But there's going to be labs that are going to be out next summer through NGG as well to support that course. Now, the big data science and big data analytics course actually comes with labs from EMC. It is the one course we do have labs. It's also using virtual machines and open source tools for that. And then I would just say, I mean, a lot of these faces I see here are, I have a few participating members in the program, Collin College, Orange Coast Community College, I know Diablo Valley's here too, but that are participating in the program. But we have like an online Zula, and these are like, oh, and Alone. Alone, I always say it wrong, sorry. I'll get it. Alone. It's like I told my brother, yeah, he's truck driving now, and he'll say I meant Stourbridge. I'm like, no, it's Sturbridge. Like, so when you live there, you get it down. But we have an online end user license agreement where basically saying we're giving you a free license, and in return you agree to offer the courses for academic credit. That's really the big thing. And then once you get in, we give you access to the faculty community and the training and whatnot. And then I do just like to highlight that we have a huge following on Facebook. And we're an international, this is a global program, so we're always posting great infographics, lots of additional resources about what's happening in the industry on this page, and we also have a Twitter account where we're doing that. So I think you can get a lot of great additional resources there that I just like to highlight. And then I'm going to hand it over to Rich, and I do want to just give one quick plug, which is just really exciting thing about partnering with NDG is we now are doing all of our ISM training the trainer for faculty with Cassia, and I know a lot of you know Cassia. And we're in doing that, we're allowed to do the NDG labs as part of the training. So it's a really, and it's all online, so you don't have to show up someplace. And we have one next week, but we also have two in the summer, one in June, and I think the other's in August. And so those are, you just go out to Cassia, and anybody who's teaching can enroll and take it. I mean, you can even take it and not join the program, but you could take it and say, hey, is this for me? And get through the training and then decide that you want to enroll. So it's also just a great way to kind of test things out. So, Rich, hopefully I left you enough time. Are we okay?
Oh, yeah, we're fine. Thank you. If I can get the slideshow running. Oh, thank you. All right. So we've had some exciting equipment this morning. I don't know if any of you have ever supported remote labs. Well, some of you have. I know I recognize Richard, Julie. Yeah. So if you're Mr. Watson in the back with VMware. So if you've ever done remote labs, the neat thing is you can essentially host things and have everything prepped for people. But the folks at the remote side have to kind of do a few things too, right? You've got to have firewall holes, the client loaded, and so we had a little fun this morning, and it happened to be my issue, not theirs. So I thought we had a firewall problem, and as I dug into it, what it was the browsers in the room were disabling the plugins. So I don't know if you've ever run into that issue, and so it wasn't obvious what was going on. So forgive me for a little anxiety as I get up in front of everybody today. So got a couple of things that I want to kind of give a quick overview. First, a quick apology to some people in the room. Some people in the room have seen this so many times, they're probably sick and tired of it. So I apologize because we have been running workshops, and many of you, wow, what have I got going on here? Huh.
It was doing it too fast. Did you put it in copy? Did you put it in presenter mode?
I don't know. Let's do this again. What do we got here? Let's see. You got the wrong presentation?
No, that's what I do.
All right, there we go. And view. Okay. All right, great. Sorry about that. There we go again. All right. So those of you who have seen some of the time, again, my apologies. Those that are new to the NETLAB concept, what NETLAB is designed to basically be is software to automate your lab environment for you. NETLAB is not the virtualization tool, okay? NETLAB is not Cisco routers. It's not Microsoft operating systems. What it's going to allow you to do is take your lab equipment and then put it behind our software, and then your lab equipment can become accessible to anybody anywhere in the world, okay? So that's the goal. Now, next question is why don't we build a big cloud and then let everybody from everywhere in academia all over the world access that cloud. Anybody got any thoughts why we don't do it that way? Go for it. Bandwidth, that's a good reason.
Single point of failure.
Single point of failure, maybe. But I think we can get around the single point of failure.
Microsoft's insane licensing.
Licensing, that's a good reason. We can't do anything with that, can we? We're limited by licensing. And licensing is really an important component, right? You as an academic institution have agreements with vendors that give you software license for many of the things that you want to put up here as your lab equipment. What if one company or one organization decided to do all this as one big cloud? How many agreements do you think they'd have to go get? Oh, it'd go on forever. It would be almost impossible to pull off, right? So we're trying to enable academic institutions to stand up, if you will, their own little private training cloud so that they can do distance learning. What else are we trying to accomplish? What's another problem with lab equipment? How many of you have all the budget you want? So you can just keep racking servers and build the biggest virtualist farm you want. Well, that's great. That's awesome. Well, it's my experience that if you want to serve like a number of students in a classroom, like 20 to 30, you're probably gold. But when your administration comes to you and says, hey, let's grow this and go distance learning, it becomes a problem to scale what you're doing in the classroom, to make it scale and then make it easy to manage. So that's one of the other goals that we're trying to accomplish. All right, now how we're doing this. The NETLAB software is all the software functions that you might need to manage your lab equipment, whether it's real Cisco equipment. And what we're doing there is we're writing scripts to manage that Cisco gear. Now, we're not competing with Packet Tracer. It's a simulator, right? Great tool. Love it. But when your students advances to like CCNP and advanced security, CCNA security, or other security certs, what's the problem with simulation? It gets more and more expensive to simulate everything. So eventually you need real gear, and that's why Cisco likes to work with us. We actually host this for Packet Tracer developers, content developers. We're working with Cisco on content right now. Now, when you get into virtualized environments, we can use VMware software, ESXi, and vCenter. Our software can talk to the API of vCenter, and then your ESXi servers can host your virtual machines, and we can use automation to make it easy for you to scale. For example, Richard, how many students did you teach 2 years ago in virtualization in the classroom?
I have to go to David, who's our teacher. How many do we have? Like
David, how many did you get?
30?
For the online or the face-to-face?
Either.
Well, face-to-face, we were doing 20 online, 28.
Okay.
20 using NVG.
So was it easier to scale with the real hardware or virtualized?
Obviously, for the virtualized.
So how many students do you think you could potentially scale to if others wanted to work with you, so they were using Ohloni's NETLAB environment?
Yeah.
How many could you scale to, you think?
With our current licensing, since with the max we have 4 operating at a time, that says we could probably host 80 students.
All right, so there you go. So we've gone from 20 in the classroom to doing it online, and now we can get to 80 students. So a 4-time multiplier. I would argue we could probably help you get to 160 or 200, so we can talk about that offline. But I think you could get there. Okay. Now the nice thing about it is you're not limited to just the storage class or to the virtualization class. So you can scale to lots of different courses horizontally and scale it to different amounts of students, depending on what you need to accomplish. All right, now there's 2 versions of the product, and this might be what David was referring to. AE allows you to run 16 active sessions, PE 32 active sessions. That's the number of students that can actively in one lab hour be working in the environment. Now, there's no cap on inactive. So 16 can be active, but at the next lab hour, the next 16 can come in, and the next 16. So this could scale to lots and lots of students, but you're limited by one thing that you got to think about. What's that? Localized storage. Because you're the server farm, you got to have enough data storage to store all these VMs. Okay? Now, the Cisco courses we support are kind of listed here. We're not here for Cisco, but I want to point out something that's really cool. We are supporting Cisco ITE. Why is that neat? Because now you've got all these students coming in for entry-level courses, right? Lots of students, and you don't have enough equipment to scale to them. We're going to be virtualizing many of the labs working with Cisco, so you can scale that course too. And that's a lot of schools are asking us for that. We support the VMware program. Rick and I are going to do VMware sessions where you can do View labs. I don't know if anybody wants to teach the View course. Anybody want to teach VMware View? That's pretty popular. VDI is going to be really important in localized communities. Everybody wants to do cloud training, but if you think about it, if your community doesn't have data centers, Your students may have to go somewhere else to get a job to run a cloud, right? But VDI, businesses everywhere are going to deploy VDI. So View is going to be a big deal in the marketplace. All right? We're also supporting cybersecurity. Now we've got CompTIA Security Plus, we got the CAE mapping for 4011. We're working on others, including forensics and ethical hacking. We're doing a lot of that work with Cassia.org. And then we're also adding your own virtual machine pod, so you can add any VM you want and create your own lab library. If a school wants to work with us, we'll work with you to distribute your labs. But what am I after? Quality, right? So I want to work with folks that can help us deliver all these different kinds of libraries schools want. Here's an example of a company that's giving an IT version 6 supplemental lab library. That's an example of a library that would be worth deploying. Why? Because everybody needs to figure out how to get to IT version 6. Now, I'm also working with LPI.org. You guys know who LPI is? Okay, we're in discussions adding their libraries and their certs, and David actually encourages us to do that. So thank you for that, David. It's already happened. Yeah, I met with them yesterday, and we're already in the process of trying to work that out. Then ITE, as I mentioned, there's somebody in the room, 2 people that are working on the NIS GTC grant, Julie and Ann, and they are working really hard to deploy 4 different topics and disciplines, 16 different courses. It may even be more than that for all I know. Ann's nodding her head yes. Now we're here to talk about the EMC Academic Alliance. How many of you would like to do a real lab? How many would like to log in and try a lab? Rick Watson? Nobody? How many are not going to raise their hand no matter what I ask? I always ask that, and it seems like that's consistent. We'll try to do a lab then, and I'll assume somebody will log in and do it. Okay. Now, in this course offering, we currently support the Information Storage and Management course, EMC ISM. Now, why would we want to pick that course as the first offering? No ideas? There's a cert, right, Kim?
Yeah, each of them has certificates.
All right, so how many of you out there, when you teach an IT class, how many of you do your students come to you and go, hey, I really want a job, that's why I'm here, right? How many of them just come to class just for fun? There are a few of those, right? But most are coming because they want a job. This course is really cool because if you get a CCNA or you get an operating system skill and you want to stand out from the crowd, what's the problem with getting a lot of those other skills? They become commoditized over time, right? Like a CCNA, 15 years ago, you were golden, right? Because there weren't that many CCNA running around, right? Now you're competing with the guy next to your right and your left and people 10 years before you that were in the class, right? So it's a lot of competition. So if you want to stand out, go take the ISM course, pass the cert, and now when you come in with your CCNA, you can go, hey, employer, I've also got some storage skills. That was one of the reasons we were extremely motivated to work on this course offering. Now, there's another thing that people are asking us for. How many of you want to teach a cloud course at your campus? Whether it's an overview and introduction or whether it's the real how to configure cloud computing. Okay, I can go through a library lab for cloud infrastructure if you guys would be more interested in that. Or we can do an actual lab. So I can let you go either path, or I can try to do both. 10 minutes? Okay. That answers our question. You can do labs outside the session. We'll kind of do that. All right. So let's look at the cloud infrastructure and services course. We're hearing from a lot of schools they want to teach cloud computing. We have the EMC ISM labs. At the end of this, I'll go over them real quick. It'll only take me about 30 seconds. This course is a pretty complex offering. Now, why do you think it's complex? Anybody guys got some thoughts? Software licenses. We talked about that earlier, right? We've got a lot of software that we're going to have to deploy to build a cloud infrastructure, right? We've got to build the cloud itself. We'll probably use VMware. We could use an open source product, etc. But we're going to build the cloud itself. And then on top of that, we've got to start managing operating systems within our cloud. And then on top of that, we've got to run software on top of that operating system and applications, right? So a lot of complexity. Well, to deliver a course, we need to make it easier. So what do we want to do? First question we ask, is there a certification, right? Can we map to a cert to help our schools out that are using the different lab environment? So we look at the course itself. If it maps to a cert, great. If not, we try to align to the overview objectives of the course. EMC has a course, and here is kind of the overview of the objectives in the curriculum itself. Journey to the cloud, classic data center, virtualized data center, I'll let you kind of read through it real quick. So this is what EMC is mapping to for the curriculum. Now, Julie, you're working on a cloud curriculum in your grant, right? So others are working on cloud curriculums, and I suspect you'll use some of this material, right? Okay. All right. So here's an overview of labs that we're going to try to map to that course offering. So you can look through these labs real quick. And you get a feel for what's going on in the labs themselves. Now, what are we teaching in these labs? The first set of labs are going to teach storage concepts, right? Because we've got to get them to understand how to manage the data. And then we're going to start teaching them virtualization concepts. Okay? So that's what we're going to present to your student. Now, here's the mapping of the actual chapters in the EMC course to the actual lab exercises themselves. And what are we trying to accomplish here? As you introduce the student to reading, please go read, come to the lecture. We want to align a lab exercise to that learning material that they were taught. So that's what we're after. Now, then we get into the actual physical topologies that we're going to use. Now, this course gets pretty complex in the topologies. This topology can be used for lab 1 through 8. Notice what we've got in here. We've got FreeNAS. We're going to use FreeNAS as our tool to teach the student storage. Now, Bill is going to have a session this afternoon. What time? 1:30. If you come to that session, you can actually do storage labs. You'll use OpenFiler. You can install OpenFiler or actually start configuring RAID on different disk arrays. So if you want to come to that session, check with Bill or look on the agenda, and we'll do an actual labs using OpenFiler. For this course, we decided to go with FreeNAS because there's more flexibility in the application, what we can do. Now, here are the pod requirements. Now, this is how much resources we're going to start to eat up. These are all virtual machines, no real gear. So we can clone them, assign them to a student, and they can own them for the entire semester if we wanted. And here we get into some changes in the lab. This is going to start teaching the student VMware View. Now, we may drop this. Now, why might we drop this? Because of licensing. We might teach View as a total separate course. This would be an introduction to View, so we might drop that out even though it's in the curriculum. That's what we'll have to work through on a pilot. Here we go into benefits of like vMotion and storage. So we're going to start teaching the student some concepts associated with virtualization, managing vMotion, and how that's applied to storage. Then VMware vCenter Chargeback. This is my favorite lab. I love it. Why? Because IT students go to your classes and they come out and they think all they're going to be is an IT propeller head. But then all of a sudden they find out there's things called budgets. And, you know, just because they can do it doesn't mean they get to do it. You know, there's a real business application decisions. So we're going to actually have a lab that talks about money, i.e. how to manage that money associated with that IT cloud you're building. Okay? Then we're going to get into vCloud Director. This is a product that you're probably going to see come out from VMware that's available. As we go through these, you can see the different complexity in the introducing students to a large variety of courses. I don't think you would want to introduce this to your first semester student, right? This is probably a capstone course at a community college, like your second year, right? Or it may be a continuing education type offering, which, do you have a door for that?
We do. We're coming out with a program, the EMC Learning Partner Program. So we'll actually have a paid version of Academic Alliance that's very affordable for continuing education at community colleges. So that's going to become available sometime in Q1. That'll be available. If schools could do both. Like I have a school that'll probably do both.
All right, so we've got in the classroom, and then you might even have continuing ed. So you may have folks who want to come and learn about cloud computing as continuing ed. This would be a lab library you could offer them. Now here are the lab dependencies. Notice the required software on the left. Notice the required VMs on the right. So we're getting into some complexities, okay? Now here is a mapping of all the different software images that we're going to have to manage and the licensed software. Now we'll give you step-by-step guidance on how to set this up. But someone is going to have to set up the environment that first time, and then that person will have to clone it and assign it to the student, right? Does that sound familiar? Okay. This class will be more complex than past classes. But you can just look at all the software dependencies and understand why. Okay? Now, this gets into the individual labs. This is the first lab where we're going to start introducing the student to storage concepts and we're going to teach them RAID. Now, I'm not going to dive into that this much, but I'm going to back up here. Does anybody have questions for me about this cloud computing course that we'll be working with EMC on? First question I usually get is, when is it coming out? Summer of 2013. You can pilot summer of 2013. Yes, David?
I always got a question about licenses. VMware licenses for classes don't last the length of the class. Will this class also show them how to apply licenses to their pods?
Yes. VMware is going to grant you licenses, but it'll be similar to the vSphere course, where it's a limited license. In other words, it's got a timeline that the license is good for.
I just want to make sure that they understand how to apply them in the middle of the class, which is what typically happens with the...
Oh, you mean as a student exercise? Yeah, I can't defer to that, but I can have you work with Jason Jenish on our team, who's working and writing the labs with subject matter experts, David, so you could work with them on that specific. As often, I don't manage the labs, obviously. Somebody else smarter than me does that. Okay. Any other questions about this course before I go on to the storage course? All right. How many of you would be interested in this course, this cloud overview? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, that's great. That's a good percentage. Okay, good. Considering some of you won't raise your hand no matter what I ask, I feel good about that. All right. So what I want to do real quick is go to our website, and I want to share with you how this storage class, if you have a NETLAB system, can easily be adopted. All right. On here, you have a nice video of Kim, where Kim is doing some co-marketing with us. If you go over here to Labs, you'll see that you've got the Information Storage Management course. You click on that, you'll see the information you would need to teach this course. First thing you need is the textbook. Kim, do you still give away the textbook?
Yeah, I was going to say, if anybody's interested in any of these courses and you're not already in the program, we'll give you free copies of either the textbook for ISM or the other copies of our commercial course list of the other ones. Because obviously people want to see what it is before they decide if they want to do it. So,
all right. Now here's the actual labs. Now notice the complexity is much simpler. I think you could probably get away with this with a student that has some basic introduction to operating system or a basic PC class, because we're going to do an introduction to storage. They're actually going to install OpenFiler. Again, you can do that at Bill's session today if you want. Then they're going to get an overview of RAID, where they're actually going to configure RAID on a server. It's a virtual machine, but they're configuring RAID. Then we're going to do configuration of LUNs. All right? I mean, we're going to get the basic building blocks to understand how to manage data on a server. Okay? Then we're going to look at network-attached storage. Then we're going to analyze protocols and performance, overview of iSCSI, backup and recovery, identify security vulnerabilities, securing storage infrastructure, managing storage infrastructure. If you do these labs, you're going to have a pretty good basis to start with. And the nice thing is, you're going to have real hands-on experience, so when you go take the CERT exam, you not only understood and read the curriculum, you did some things with your hands-on configuring of the lab, of the servers themselves. So I've heard that feedback has been very helpful in passing the CERT, because students are getting concrete examples of what they're learning in the classroom. Is that similar to what you're hearing?
Yes, the feedback's been really great on the lab. We're really, like I said, very excited about the partnership with NDG.
All right, now if you want to deploy this and you have a NETLAB system today, here is really where the rubber kind of meets the road. Here's an install guide, and this gives you step-by-step guidance, very prescriptive guidance on how to stand this up on your NETLAB Plus system, okay? So if you want to teach the storage labs and you have a NETLAB system today, all the information is out there, and that is pushed to your system. All you have to do is join the EMC Academic Alliance. Once we know that, we'll push all this information out to your system. You can also get the virtual machines from cassia.org. We can't provide them to you. Why? Microsoft licensing. But another academic institution can, so we work with the .org to provide them to you. Okay, so that's a quick overview. Before I leave, any questions? Because I don't want to keep you here too long, and Kim may want to close out here. Any questions for me? No? I guess I got a quick question before I get back to Kim. The information that I just presented, do you guys find that helpful? Helps me with presentation? Yes? No? Okay, all right, great. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, and then